How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo. If you're new here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Today, I've got the full review for you of this. The Civivi button lock Elementum. I've had a chance to carry it for a week now. I have some thoughts. Let's get into it. So full disclosure, I bought this knife on the heels of doing my review of the AD 20.5. A knife, by the way, that people just loved to pieces for one reason and one reason only, and that is the shark lock. And you know what? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Shark lock, phenomenal lock. My biggest issue, it was cheap materials, cheap fit and finish, but it wasn't cheap. And people just reminded me in the comments section of that video that, well, you know, if I'm willing to pay that much, then it's worth it. And it's like, well, you know, that's a very good point. The reason why I don't feel like that price point is necessary is because of knives like the Civivi Elementum button lock. This knife right here is $55, and you get 14C28 and you get G10 handle scales. And I know I'm over here, I'm distracting you in the video because I'm doing this a lot. And I gotta say, like, I thought I got this out of the box and I loved it. And then I had this little thought in the back of my head that said, you know, in about 2 or 3 days, you're just gonna put it down and pick up something else, because that's just kind of the nature of the business when it comes to, you know, collecting and adding knives, is that you know, you buy something, flip it a couple times, and then it's on to the next one. Whatever's new, sharp, and shiny. And don't get me wrong, that's part of one of the reasons why I love the EDC hobby, is because there's always something else. There's always something next. Very few people are getting out of the hobby, because even if they take a 5, 6, 7 month break, eventually they'll see that there's a knife out there that they just gotta have, and then they'll get in on the drop and it's back to it. A week later, I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, it's held an edge and I'm still enjoying carrying it. I'm wearing shorts today. I carried this in shorts and it felt fine. I didn't see any issue carrying this outside of, you know, like the regular Levi jeans or anything like that. There's certain knives that you just can't carry outside of jeans. You know, you put them in shorts and, you know, then your shorts hang down and it's bad look, you know, and you've got people saying, hey, why is part of your shorts sagging? And then you have to explain why you're carrying a knife. That's always a fun conversation. Anyways, fit and finish on this, by the way, is great. They're not super expensive materials. You know, it's not like you have crazy, you know, liner in the back, no scale, like no steel scales, G10 handle scales, 14C28N. It came sharp out of the box. I was able to actually shave a bald spot onto my arm with this, which, you know, you think it's cool at the start. You're like, yeah, shave sharp. And then you look at your arm, you're like, great, bald spot. Wonderful. My arm just aged 30 years in the span of about 2 seconds. I digress. Something that I did not go over in my unboxing was this. This is a spot for a lanyard, and I really love it when knives do this, because they give you the option without making you sacrifice space on the back of the scale or the way that you can add the clip in there. They don't make you sacrifice that because they put it in there as a spacer. So there's just a little barrel and you can just put your lanyard on through there. So if lanyards are your thing and if you like lanyards, you can have it. If you hate lanyards because they're dorky, then you don't have to have a lanyard hole. I mean, it's a pretty great compromise. Everybody gets what they want. I wish Spyderco would do that with their knives. Not because I hate lanyards, because I don't, but just because I like having the option and not having to sacrifice if I don't have to. So that's pretty cool. Having carried this for a week, it is starting to show some wear, specifically on the pocket clip. And in a weird spot too. It's like right here at the top of the pocket clip. I don't know. In my unboxing, I mentioned that one of the things that I just did not like was the pocket clip. But listen, it's $55, $60. Maybe a little bit more depending upon which model you get. So I'm okay with having a C-level pocket clip if it means that I get the rest of it to be good. And today I'm going to try something new when it comes to the actual review, and I'm going to offer a rating and a ranking system. And I'll have a video coming out about that in the next week or so, where I go over exactly how I decide what each category is, but we're actually going to do that today for the very first time. That's right. So please stay till the end of the video and you'll get to see the very first archived rank for this knife. The G10 has held up really well in the week that I've carried it. And guys, it's been in my pocket almost every single day since. I have had other knives in my pockets, but predominantly this was the main one that I carried. I took it to work with me in my office job. I took it when I went out to the gas station to put gas in my car. Now, as far as the ergonomics go, there's nothing crazy about the handle design. It's actually kind of boring, but it works. It works because there are no hot spots on here. Even that pocket clip, it feels fine. The grip, whether you're doing an ice pick grip or whether you're doing, a hammer grip, I'm not sure if those are the correct terms, but it's comfortable. You don't feel like you have it digging into your hand. Now, I don't spend hours at a time using my knife. That's why I sharpen them when I need to, is so that when I need it, I can whip it out, we're good to go. So ergonomics are not a huge thing for me, but I know they are for some people, which is why I'm bringing them up. It feels comfortable. The G10 is actually not too grippy, but definitely grippy enough where I don't feel like this is going to fly out of my hands at any given point. I think that I even handled this one day when my palms were sweaty. It's getting hotter. We're going into the summer months, and I didn't ever feel like this was going to slip out of my hands. Now, another thing that I want to mention that kind of goes along with ergonomics is the balance of the knife. It wasn't something that I imagined I would really spend a whole lot of time talking about, but the truth is that the balance of this knife is great. The lock is strong. The lockup on this knife, there's no blade play. It doesn't feel cheap. It's affordable, but it doesn't feel cheap. And what that means is that when we're looking at things like the materials, and we're looking at the execution of the knife weighed against the value, how much does it cost versus the materials, the ergonomics, all of that. It's great. I don't know how anyone could give this knife a bad rating or a bad review, because anything that you go to talk about with it, you'd be like, oh, well, I don't like 14C28N. Okay, well, it's $55. Show me a better blade steel at $55. That isn't to say that I don't have a complaint. The complaint that I have with this knife is the heat treat. Civivi lists this to be at like 57 to 58 HRC, which isn't a huge deal. It means that the steel itself is going to be tougher. But for my uses, I actually prefer blade steel to be at 60, 59 to 60. And I think that taking it up just one extra more point could actually get a lot more out of this steel. And if you don't know the difference between 58 and 59 HRC, it's definitely worth looking up, because it's not just a single point. There's a world of difference behind that. Full disclosure, I did not sharpen this knife at all during the last week that I've had it and that I've been using it. I did put it on the strop once after I did my unboxing video, because this blade stropped up nice and quick and it held that same edge through all of the tasks that I used it for. I've opened boxes, I've cut paper, I've opened plastic bags, I pried up railroad tracks. No, I didn't actually do that last part. But I know some people are going to be out there like, well, I don't think that the blade stock is very thick, so I don't want to snap the blade. Don't use this to pry up railroad tracks, guys. That's not what it's meant for. It's great for tearing up boxes, opening packages, opening mail, impressing your friends. So yeah, I did notice, by the way, that you can get new pocket clips for these. You can get titanium pocket clips really easily. So that's great. What I did not see was different handle scales. I saw some for the regular Elementum, but what I was really hoping for was a set of aluminum, at least, maybe titanium, and I didn't find it. On the modification front, this knife is not super modifiable. That's something that I really, really wish would change, especially given how popular this knife is. Tons of people have bought this knife, and they should, because it's an affordable cost and a good value with good production quality. The tolerances are great. I don't have very many negative things to say about this knife. So before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and pop into our actual rank and review sheet, and we're going to give this a score. The highest score possible would be 100. Let's pop into that review. For the very first category, we're going to go over fit and finish. That includes the edge from the factory, blade centering, and just the overall execution. The overall execution on this knife is great, and the blade centering was spot on. While the edge was sharp, however, it wasn't lightning sharp, and I did have to hit it on the strop to really bring out the natural qualities. For those reasons, this is scoring a 7 out of 10 for fit and finish. Next up is ergonomics. Ergonomics is going to be the comfort while gripping and the ease of deployment. The ergonomics in a knife are important, and while this knife is very easy to grip and has no hot spots, and also the ease of deployment is decent with the button lock, I can't really give this a super high score, mainly because you can only deploy it one way. And for those reasons, this will score a 8 out of 10. We're going to follow up with the hardware. The hardware is going to include screws, pocket clip, backspacer, and barrel spacer. This gets massive points for having the lanyard option within the spacer itself, so you don't have to make any sacrifices whether you want a lanyard or not. And it does use barrel spacers for everything else. It's got a steel liner. The pocket clip is not the greatest. I would say that the pocket clip is what drags down on this category, and the screws are also not necessarily the greatest. Screws are easily replaced, however. That comes in at a score of 7 out of 10. Moving on to the next category of the locking mechanism. The locking mechanism might just be one of the Civivi button lock Elementum's strongest features in the button lock. Making it different than other button locks was something I was very impressed by. This comes in at a strong 9 out of 10, and this is definitely, possibly, the X factor. Now, what a knife is made of is very important. We're going to talk about the materials. The two main materials that you need to focus on with the Civivi button lock Elementum is going to be the black G10 handle scales and the 14 C28N blade. Those are very adequate materials. They're not amazing, but they're good enough to earn a 7 out of 10. Up next is design language. The design language of this knife is great. It's not too overcomplicated and it's not too oversimplified. It's just good enough to be comfortable as a user, fun to show your friends, and fun to hand off to them as well. For the design language, I give this knife 8 out of 10. Now, none of that means anything if this knife isn't available to buy. Luckily, because Civivi/We Knives has great production, they're able to make this knife very available. The availability of this knife is not limited in the slightest, and in most circumstances, you can find one on your favorite knife website. Availability is going to come in at a strong 9. Also, having just mentioned production, the next category is production style. Is it custom? Is it factory made? I've never seen a custom Civivi Elementum. I'm sure someone out there might make one day. This is a factory made knife, and the factory pulls off that execution well, earning this a strong 8 out of 10. We're starting to come down to the wire on categories, and second to last is the X factor, a trait or quality of the knife that stands out so much that it deserves extra consideration. In this case, I would give extra consideration to the locking mechanism. The button lock being unique from other button locks is definitely the X factor for this knife, so much so that they added it to the name. The X factor, in this case, is worth 10 points. And finally, the category in which all other categories are weighed against is value. Value is whether or not the cost is justified by everything else that we just went over. In this case, it absolutely is. The value on this knife is a 10. After tallying up all the totals, we come to a final score of 83 out of 100, which is a very strong score, especially given the cost of this knife. At this point, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. That's the review. I am going to archive this score and place it in the YouTube community. And if you disagree with it, I would love for you to post in the comment section below. I might be willing to change a score if the power of the people says that I should. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you stayed this long and didn't like the video, definitely leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one.